So could this continue? It actually could. If you look at what happened today with these kinds of names that crushed. Okay, folks, we got a lot to cover. It was a lot of carnage out there today, and it's getting worse after hours. We're going to talk about it. So I really want to go through the earnings, but let's just talk about the elephant in the room. So Tesla, you see this move down? Everyone's talking about how they predicted it. And look, I've been saying for some time that you're going to break the 50-day. Nobody saw this coming today. To think that you're going to predict this in one day, it's just delusion. It's not going to happen that way, right? You're not going to predict the single greatest move that it's had besides this day in a year. It just doesn't work that way. The question is, what do you do now, right? Because that's how we make money, not off of talking about what's happened, but what is going to happen. So right now, after hours, this is your low, 862. I have pre and post data in. If we take that out, you can see how much lower you are after hours, another 13 points. This is because of earnings of Microsoft, Google, Texas Instruments. There were some really good reports that we're going to get to as well. But the question is, what do you do now? And the bottom line is, you really cannot do anything here. If you want to short, go for it. But you're starting to short a stock that's down about 13-15% in a day and can snap back pretty fast. Now, if you look at the RSI here, that's not going to make you want to say, oh, I have to get out. But when you start seeing RSIs of 8, 10, and I understand, yes, it's down, but even that case, this is dropping and this is rising. So you have a negative divergence. This doesn't tell you when it's going to bounce, right? It just tells you that it's going to bounce, okay? So keep that in mind. I would say if this breaks 862, you're going lower tomorrow, obviously, but let's take a look at this. Could we gap down tomorrow and flush everybody out? It's a possibility. And we're going to talk about that. Stay to the end because we're going to go over the indexes. And I really want to go over the VIX because I do believe that you could get to a point tomorrow where you flush people out. Now, see this level? This is a level that is very possible to get to, but there's some other levels that you're going to have to get through before then. So just watch how we play with this level, this 862 level, and see if we can hold. If you break that, can you get to the 750s? Yes, you can. You were there when the Qs were just where they were. So it's very possible. So keep this in mind. I would not be a buyer first thing in the morning unless you gap down big time, but I would really watch this and see where you can land. Now, there's very little reason that you're going to stop in this range, but I think the move is great enough that it's possible. So one thing that we could do is just take a really quick look at fib levels. Now, so we're just going to look at a back of the envelope. Quick way is to go to the peak, right? Most recent peak and most recent close, and just get an understanding. And so the fib levels are basically telling you that 827, 828 are the next levels. Since we have nothing else, using fibs is not a bad idea. So again, close to 876, you break that tomorrow, 828 looks like the next level, and that's where we'll look to see if we can have some support. So let's get to some good news. ENPH, revenues beat substantially, which is what we wanted to see. They beat by 10 million. You have earnings. Earnings were decent. I mean, 79 cents, you were looking for 66. What do you want? And the guidance was higher for next quarter, which is interesting considering the tariffs that were imposed. But you're looking at 474 was the estimate, and they're talking about 520. So that's pretty much everything you want to see. And based upon that, look at what's going on. So could this continue? It actually could. If you look at what happened today with these kinds of names that crushed, like if you crush in this market, you're being rewarded. Arch was rewarded. Cole was rewarded today. So you can see bounces in names where they are being rewarded. And I would focus on this tomorrow. And this is a hot area. And this was grossly sold down because they thought the tariffs was going to be a big deal. If you remember Knee's earnings and how they said tariffs were going to be a big deal. Well, this went from 198 to 150, right, in 3 days. So just consider that. This can bounce tomorrow. I'm just going to see if we can open over this level, right? So let's just clean this up here and I'll show you the level. So really all you're looking for is to get over 158.52 and see where you go from there. You could put your indicators in and take a look. The bottom line here is when you're trading sideways like this, it really doesn't matter that much. You can look at the 5 and the 8, but all we're really looking to do is trade the bounce. That's all we're really looking for here. Now, Hood missed on every single front and is laying off 10% of their workforce. And I just want to point this out. We're not going to waste a lot of time on it, but I want to point this out. For people that think that this can't go to zero, it can go to zero. And don't just hold it for the hopes that someone's going to buy it. It just doesn't work that way. So just please be aware of this. See this undercut right here? This was your last stand right here. And that stand is over and you're breaking and they're laying off 10% of their workforce. So can this go to zero? The answer is yes. Okay, these things can always get worse than you think they can. I'll throw this one up because it always makes people comment. And as always, please comment. You don't have to yell at me when I say this, but please comment. But I've been talking about this for some time, like these names. You know, NIO, I've been saying this could be a zero, and people are like, oh, that's not possible. Well, it was just at $12, came down. We're at 16, and I don't see any reason it's not going to break this and go lower. Companies can go out of business. And just please keep that in mind. And I'm going to say that with Hood. This can go out of business very, very easily, especially if they have capital constraints, which it looks like they're having capital constraints. If they don't have enough money in the bank, they're not going to be able to hold on to what they have. In other words, they're going to have to find a home for the people that are using them as a brokerage. So Google was just a disaster. They missed. It was not a great miss by any stretch. It wasn't like they just missed, they really missed. So let's go through a little bit. So just so we're clear, very rare for Google to miss, and they missed by a huge number. 2462 is what they came in at. We were looking for 2611 as an estimate. That's not what you want to see. They have revenues beating by $1 million. You know, it's silly. But the guidance down, they actually guided revenues down, and that's not really what you want to see from them. Now, let's see how the quarter goes and how the conference call goes. At the time of recording this, the conference call wasn't there yet, but this is pretty much a bloodbath, and I would strongly suggest just staying away from it. Do not try to bottom fish this yet. What we want to see and what I'm looking for after hours, I may short this after hours if it breaks this level right here, right? If I break the first 15-minute bar and I break that, I'm probably going to short it. And I know people are going to say, well, you're already down 9%. Look, tomorrow could be ugly, okay? We have a saying in the trading room, and I do it on Twitter too. So make sure you follow me on Twitter if you don't, and make sure you subscribe to the channel here. But, things can get a lot nastier than they think they are, that they can. And just be aware of that. So Microsoft, good solid numbers. Nothing to really say that was wrong here, but look what's happening. Stock's coming in, okay? We don't have the conference call for another hour by the time of recording this. And everyone's going to be on that. And it's usually a very positive call. They beat by 7 cents and their revenue were in line. So it really shouldn't be doing this after being down so much. But we're just getting to the point where everybody's throwing everything out the window. And that's exactly what's happening here. So I would expect that to continue tomorrow. Use this as your guide. Okay, 269 where you open tomorrow. I wouldn't be playing with this one after hours. But, just across the board, I want to go through this and then I want to go through the indexes. It's important. Texas missed. Semis are going to get hammered, and that's going to be a really good way to segue into this and take us home. But 392 is where you're at on the SOX after hours. Okay, is this the flush that we need? 398. It's possible that major support on this is 375. Look at this on a monthly, okay? That is just so nasty. It really is. So look at that. That's where you could get to. That's very realistic. And this is where we could start possibly, and listen to the key word there, possibly marking a bottom. You just flush everything out. And what do we want to see to mark that bottom? Well, you want to see them throw everything out the window. And I think we're getting there. So one of the key things that I want you to focus on tomorrow is the VIX. Okay, give me a 35, 34, 35, 36 reading, but really anything over 35, and that's where you start getting the opportunity to put in these short-term bottom, right? And I don't know if it's going to be a long-term bottom or we're in for a multi-year thing. Nobody knows. I have my opinions on what's going to happen, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is price, right? Price pays. So get this over 35, and we could, keyword, could bounce. This is not where you start putting on your short positions, down 5% after hours on the Qs. You've had your opportunity and it's fallen apart. You don't short here, okay? I understand the break, you measure the break, and yes, we could go lower, but realistically, we could also bounce up, right? You could bounce up half of this to 329 and still be in a downtrend. And then maybe that's where you look at putting that position on. But let's take a look at something really. I want to go over one tool that I use that I think people will find interesting. So this is the Qs, and on this I have Bollinger Bands set up, but I have them set up on a third standard deviation, not a second standard deviation. So you might want to write that down. And the reason is because the chances of ever really coming out on the up or down of a third standard deviation is extremely rare. but that's where bottoms are marked, right? So you can see this. So if you see something like this on a third standard deviation, usually those points are areas that you could see this possibly bounce. And we're not there yet, right? This could go down another $12 before we're even there. So just kind of keep that in mind. Consider the idea of using that as a guide. And there's two other things that we must go over. The first thing we have to go over is that the bond, we did not get into what? We did not get to 3%. We're rolling. Now, what is the one short-term indicator that we've been using here? Well, it's not the third standard deviation Bollinger Band. It's the 5-8 cross. Look at the 5-8 cross. This is telling you bonds are going to rally. You know, it was interesting. Bank of America had a report out on this saying we're going back to 2.25, and of course I scoffed. But it's very interesting that you're breaking here. Is the GDP contraction going to take this down? If we contract, is that going to drive tech up? It's kind of it's an interesting time to watch. I know it doesn't feel great when you're looking at this. All I can tell you is these kinds of flushes, when they happen, there's a lot of money to be made 3 to 6 months later. A lot. This is really where you can make. There's like 2 or 3 times a year where something like this can happen, and we're setting up for one of them now. So I want to leave you with that. But I also want to point this out. XLE, let me just leave you with this. You're sitting right here. You tried to get over it today. You didn't. I don't think it's a quitter. I think it's going to come back. And I would say strongly on pullbacks, look at the sectors that are breaking out. It's all energy, and I would continue to focus on that. That's it. Any questions, please comment below. I read every comment and respond to every comment. And I really appreciate your support with the likes too. It helps me get in front of more people, which is why I'm trying to do this. Everyone have a great night and trade to win tomorrow. It's going to be a fun one.